Confidently controversial. Confidently controversial. Confidently controversial.
Hello, hello, hello. We're back.
Hey, everybody.
You don't know this, but we haven't been together in quite some time, so we're very excited to be here. Welcome to the Confidently Controversial Podcast.
That's right. The Confidently Controversial Podcast. I know, it's weird in podcast terms. People don't know that we haven't hung out in a little bit, but we're going to bring that energy to this podcast, so you're going to feel how excited we are to be hanging out again.
It is very exciting. It's very early in the morning. You don't know that either.
You don't know that either. And you don't need to know that. Do they need to know these things?
No, because you could be listening to this anytime.
Anytime.
In your car,
in
the shower.
Working out, listening to this.
Yeah.
You know, wherever you want to be listening to our podcast we're excited that you're there and that you're listening to us. So thank you.
And just as a reminder to everyone, our podcast, we are...
Well, we already said the name. Do we have to say it again?
No, we're not saying the name again. I'm just going to tell people what it does again.
Okay, do it.
I was going to tell people that, we rewatch movies that we watched a lot when we were younger people. And we kind of explore them from the lens of being adults.
Yes.
And what they did to us, how they impacted us, how they made us who we are today.
Right. And also I think the commenting on it, it's been so interesting to watch the movies that we have. Just to kind of think like, oh my gosh, this is not in my brain. I remembered it so differently. It's kind of like that whole thing with memory where it's not exact and things can loom larger in your brain than they actually are. So that's been a kind of exciting thing about this podcast. And I also I just love movies, and it just takes me back to a time when they were, I was able, like a kid, watching these movies, and they were such an important thing. So that's a really fun thing
too. And it was like, I think too, watching these movies when we were younger, we weren't fully aware of. I mean, the only real critics you had were like Siskel and Ebert, and it's not like you were tuning in to watch that show. So you were basing your opinions solely off of what you felt about the movie, not what the previews say or what, this Rotten Tomatoes says or what all of these other outside influence say about the movie. You were just watching it and deciding for yourself if you liked it or loved it or hated it.
Yeah, and there also wasn't, the streaming thing is so much different than it was when we were kids.
Sure.
I mean, it was really, there wasn't a lot of choice. It was what was served up to you and what was available at that time. So I feel like you ended up watching movies that maybe weren't that great, but they were available.
Right.
So you just end up watching them over and over. I mean, I don't think, I have kids, and they don't watch a movie over and over and over again. They watch TV shows. Like, they'll watch older, like, where you can have, like, that entire series that you can stream, and they'll go back and watch some TV shows, but not a movie where they have it memorized. And
just
when
they were little, maybe.
When they were little, they used to. Like, my daughter went through her Muppet phase, which was a fantastic phase.
Sure.
We missed that very much. And, like, the Disney movies they would watch.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that was before they had choice. That was when, we were watching things we liked over and over again.
I remember too. I mean, you would turn on, you like thinking about watching TV now, you put on, even to watch HBO, the channel, there's like 7 of them.
I don't even know what there is. I don't even understand how HBO works.
If there's a movie on that you wanted to watch, you can put it on, but if it already started, you can just click watch from the beginning. And you don't, so it's not like when we were kids, it was like, oh, well, this is already 35 minutes in, so I'm going to have to just watch it from here and figure out what happened.
Right. Exactly. And that's why I feel like there have been movies that I have never sat and watched all the way through. I've caught bits and pieces, on HBO throughout my life. And I also have to hand it to my parents for having HBO. I feel like we didn't have a ton of stuff growing up. We weren't we didn't have a ton of money in my recollection, but I feel like HBO was a thing that it was probably my mom that was just like, no, we have to have this.
Yeah.
And we had HBO, and we watched it so much. So I appreciate my parents. I hope they don't listen to this because I just don't want to talk to them about it. But,
Right.
I do appreciate that. But let's get to it. What is so this week?
right.
So the other thing about the show is that every episode we take turns picking the movie. So this week, Kim is picking the movie. I have no idea what that movie is going to be, and I'm very excited about it.
Oh, and I also realized we didn't introduce ourselves. I'm Kim.
Okay. You are.
And you're Emily.
I am Emily.
Because people probably don't know us that well yet. But anyway,
We get to know us. We're
get
fun.
to know us and try to differentiate our voices. I know we probably sound the same, but you'll find us out soon enough.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm just
I don't
excited
know.
to be here and talk, and I want to hear what the movie is. So
Okay.
tell me about it.
So, today I kind of forgot that I was supposed to choose my movie. So I was thinking about it last night, and I was like, what are we going to watch? Because there's just still so many great choices left. And I know that we've kind of talked about this movie before, but I don't think you've ever seen it.
Oh, no.
And
Okay.
I just find this movie to be the epitome of everything that I wanted for my whole life.
Okay.
When I was a younger person, and just the way I thought things were going to be, and just how cool it was to go to college and have your college friends and just just be
And you don't think I saw
living
this?
your real life. I don't think you have, but I don't know. Maybe,
Okay.
maybe you have. So this movie came out on June 28th, 1985.
Okay, so we were 8 years old.
I don't
Okay.
think I watched it when I was 8 years old, because I think it's either rated PG-13 or R
Okay.
for adult themes.
Yes. Well, once those ratings went into force, I feel like my parents took them very seriously. But then there were other movies that, I don't know, the way they were rated was very weird.
Right.
When you think of some of the movies from the 80s. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
So June 28th, 1985.
Okay.
It's written by Joel Schumacher,
Oh, what?
which is a familiar name to me. He died in 2020, but he also wrote The Lost Boys
Good one.
and Flatliners, which is another
Good one, too.
that I'd like to add to my list.
That is a good one. Although, okay, that movie's one of those movies that I vaguely recollect it, but I do remember watching it with my parents, and there was a sex scene or something, and my dad said something awkward when the movie started. So that's all I can remember about
good.
that movie.
I can't wait to re-explore that one with you.
Great. No, that's going to be a good one.
He also wrote Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I think he was the writer-director on both of these.
And they weren't the good ones.
No, they were the somewhere in between ones.
They were Clooney Batman? Was that Clooney Batman?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this movie is about a group of friends who just graduated from a fictional university. However, from what my reading, it was meant to be Georgetown University, which is in the D.C. area.
Okay.
And it stars, are you ready for this list?
I'm ready.
Demi Moore, Rob Lowe,
Oh, I know
Andrew
what this
McCarthy,
is.
Judd Nelson, Ali Sheedy, Mare Winningham, Andy McDowell, and Emilio Estevez.
I know what this is. Oh, I'm excited. I think I have seen it, but I think I saw it when I was older. I didn't see it when I was young.
So this
But go
movie
ahead.
is St. Elmo's Fire.
This has a great theme song
It
that
does.
I like to listen to every now and again.
Well, I learned something about the theme song.
Okay.
It was written.
Man in Motion?
It was written for a paralyzed athlete who was doing a tour to raise awareness for the Special Olympics, and it was actually written. I swear to God. And his
I want
name,
to be a man in motion, but I need a pair of wheels. Is that wheelchair?
Yes. And his name was Rick Hansen, but they determined that this was such a mighty soundtrack or mighty song.
Higher and higher.
Yes, that
So
they were going to also use it for this movie. So this movie has all of the things that are just vital to the 80s.
This is the Brat Pack, right?
Yes.
This made the Brat Pack the Brat
This
Pack.
is the epitome of Brat Pack movies.
Okay.
And
Peak Brat Pack?
Peak Pack.
Peak Pack.
This was also one of Andy McDowell's first movies, and it really made her a star.
I had no idea she was in this.
She is.
She wasn't just in Groundhog Day
She was.
and Green Card. Ugh, awful movie, Green Card.
And some fun facts were that Demi Moore and Emilio Estevez actually dated while they were filming this movie, and they were engaged for a short time.
Okay.
Demi Moore who in this movie has some drug issues. We'll get into that later. She did have to go to rehab before she filmed the movie.
Oh, so she really was a drug
Yes.
addict before the movie.
Yes. And Mare Winningham, which I always thought she was an interesting person to be part of this pack because she was always kind of looked like an older lady to me.
She does.
when
She
we
has
were
old lady
younger.
face.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was pregnant with her third child at the time she was filming this movie.
How old was she?
So this movie was in 85. She was born in 59. So she was, 26?
Yeah. Third kid at 26?
Yeah.
Mare.
No judgment.
No judgment. She was busy, is all I'm saying. So a lot going on.
Most of these guys were, 23, 24 at the time of this. So they were peak in their lives, too. You've got peak Judd Nelson. You've got Rob Lowe at his finest.
Oh, my God. I don't know.
believe he
That
plays
man
the
keeps getting
saxophone in
finer and
this
finer.
movie.
He does.
And it's
He
pretty
does.
great.
His hair in this movie. Judd Nelson, I gotta say, I'm a big Judd Nelson fan. I like a man with a strong nose.
Okay.
I do.
All right.
It's a
Well,
thing.
you know how I feel about Andrew McCarthy. And I believe he really shines in this movie.
Because you like a man with a pinched face.
Stop. It's adorable.
He is. He's very cute. Sorry, Andrew.
So this movie had a $10 million budget, which is surprisingly low considering all the star power.
But they weren't like.
No.
That's the thing I want to understand. Were they super famous before this movie? Like, what had they done?
No, the only person that was I think the only person that was like actually famous was Rob Lowe.
Okay.
I think the rest of them are really just coming into their own. They talked about how Demi Moore came to the audition on a motorcycle with the tag still on her clothing, which for some reason is in every piece of like trivia about this. I don't know what that means. And Rob Lowe brought a 6-pack of Corona. Which I guess that was how he got into his Billy character.
I'm trying to think. Did Rob Lowe grow up with the Estevezes?
I think so.
Okay, because I really feel like I've heard him talk about that, how they were friends.
Or like roommates or something.
Something. Well,
Yeah.
Rob Lowe was in. I just was listening to something where he was talking about The Outsiders,
Yes.
and that was like his big first break. But he was saying how like everybody auditioned for
Right.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was a big deal. I want to watch that movie too. That's on my list.
So, $10 million budget. It made $37.8 million at the box office, so it did pretty well.
Okay.
Overall, though, quite panned by critics.
Really?
Yes, I was looking at the scores. It did not do well. And a lot of people said it was kind of like overindulgent and just kind of like a bunch of like pretty people behaving badly with like a poor storyline, which I beg to differ.
But I'll be the judge of that.
And I just really remember the Ali Sheedy character in general to me is like, she like wears pearls and she's just very like, I don't know, classy 80s, like big jacket. I don't know. She's just the one in this
Okay,
movie for
really?
me. Yeah. I really think that storyline is pretty great. So
I have no idea. I really don't. I think I watched it as an adult. I have a very clear vision of Rob Lowe playing the saxophone.
Yes.
I don't know. Like I said, the song, and I remember it just being everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I think that's my connection with it is that they were everywhere.
Yes.
But I wasn't like Breakfast Club. I was not allowed to watch.
Right.
When it was, I did watch, but again, Mom and Dad, please don't be listening. I did watch it. So this one, I just remember seeing their pictures everywhere,
Yeah.
and it just being a very big deal with all of them.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Okay.
So, you ready to watch it?
I'm really excited to watch it, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to come back and comment on it.
Yeah.
That's gonna be great.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be
Love
good.
it.
Okay,
All
I'm
right.
looking forward to it. Okay, bye guys.
Confidently controversial. Confidently controversial.
Okay.
All right, we're back.
We're back.
Oh my goodness,
Better than we were before because we just watched the best movie ever.
So I'm so curious because I realized I'd never seen this movie before. I definitely would I definitely would have remembered it if I had seen it. So, as someone who saw this when you were young, what are your thoughts watching it today? Like, does it hold up?
I still loved it as much as I did before. I mean, I see the problems with it. I do. I definitely see the problems with it, but it's
so problematic. This should be the poster child for confidently controversial.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. It has a lot of problems, and I admit that fully. But at the same time, there's something about it that I really just love with all of my being.
I get it. I mean, there's a lot of very pretty people in this movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rob Lowe. I know we talked about it before, but baby.
Yeah.
He is a hottie. Mm-hmm. Judd Nelson.
Yeah.
Andrew,
McCarthy.
I was wrong. He's very, very handsome. I forget. I think it, and then I see him like in Mannequin. It's like, I forget. He is extremely handsome. There's a reason for him being who he was. And then Emilio Estevez, very highly problematic. We're going to talk about him in a second.
And also,
but still very handsome. He's very cute.
Yeah, I mean,
he's that Estevez
if you like a young Martin Sheen,
who doesn't like a young Martin Sheen? Is there anyone out there? I mean, Charlie Sheen was really more of a Charlie Sheen, circa Ferris Bueller kind of lady myself.
Sure.
But Emilio Estevez, and the ladies are all very beautiful as well. Mare. Very pretty. They dressed her terribly.
They really did.
They did not do her any favors. No. And I mean, now that you said that that she was pregnant, and that is in the story, not that she's pregnant, but that they make some allusions to her being fat, which she isn't. No. I mean, you can sort of tell that she was pregnant. Like in some shots, you can see like it's a little bit, like you can tell her waist was let out a little bit. They also put her in like Easter clothes. They put her in the worst of the worst, like 80s stuff. Yeah. It was just awful. I felt bad for her. Right. But still very cute. They were all very cute.
Yeah. I feel like we need to go down the list and kind of like go through the characters. There's a lot of characters in this movie.
Well, I had to make a list because I was like, I wanted to keep track of them and like what their things were.
And I feel like
they all had issues.
They all had issues, but I feel like you probably could have done without maybe
Emilio's thing was extra. Bad. Yeah. It was extra, but it was also like, it could have been its own separate horror movie.
Sure.
It was terrible.
So we got Demi Moore, who is Jules.
Yes, and she's like a cokehead. Yeah. But she also has like an awesome job to start.
Well, they said she got like recruited into international banking right out of college.
Which good for her.
Didn't we all?
Well, they went to Georgetown, so I assume they're like pretty smart. They don't say what Rob Lowe obviously studied the saxophone.
Yes.
All right, so Jules, yes.
And then she's talking about, like, her stepmom is dying, and that's, like, the thing that's, like, running through it. She's, like, waiting for her stepmom to die.
And saying bad things about her.
Yeah, but then you come to find out, I guess, that she just wants to she just got a lot of daddy issues.
She's got a lot of daddy issues. And they do. They can't get it. That's the thing. That's the problem with too many people in a cast.
Yes.
You can't fully explore anybody's
doing.
Anybody. Right. You just kind of like get hints of all of this
touch
stuff.
on things here.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so we got her. I'm going to check mark her.
And then you got Rob Lowe, who is Billy Hicks.
Billy. How did he make his way into this group? Because he's definitely problematic. In the way that he's just like, he can't get his shit together.
No, I think he's like I think the way that they position him in this movie is like a refuse to grow up kind of person.
But at the same time, he impregnated someone. He's got a baby.
And he's married. Yeah.
And he's still playing that saxophone.
Right.
His sweet saxophone that he refuses to put in a case. And he just carries it on his back everywhere. Like it just can't break ever.
Right.
Yeah.
He must go through reeds like crazy.
The whole thing. I think it would just be terrible. Right. It wouldn't sound good. But he's very talented.
Yeah. So he's in a band,
handsome.
and somehow, even as the saxophone player, the band is named after him, which I just think is
and he's pulling
absurd.
babes. He's pulling babes left and right, which is totally he should. He's earning them with that face.
And of this group, I will say that Mare Winningham's character, Wendy, she's like just in love with him.
Yeah.
She is probably the quiet, very smart.
And so she comes from a rich family, but she also wants to work in social services.
She comes from a greeting card empire.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I didn't realize that her family was the greeting cards as well. And then that boy was related to the greeting cards, or he worked for the company.
He worked for the worked for her brother-in-law at the company.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So, he was part of the greeting card conglomerate.
The greeting card empire. Yes. That is her.
So Wendy, she's the one, she's Mare Winningham. She's kind of like more mousy and, quiet.
And always just chasing after Rob Lowe.
Trying to change the world. But she can, and she just is, he uses her for money. He uses her, for friendship and companionship. And like, she's just always there for him.
And I think he likes,
Yeah, he treats her shitty.
He's not mean to her, I would say. Like, he's always sweet to her. And I do think that there's like, you can tell in other scenes if something's going on with her, like he's paying attention. Like, he does have a certain amount of care for her. Yeah. But not in the way she's definitely, it's not an equal relationship at all. No. So you got her, you have Andrew, well, let's talk about Judd and Ali Sheedy.
Okay.
So Ali Sheedy and Judd Nelson are like this perfect couple
Alec
of
and
the
Leslie.
friend group. Yeah. Yes. And he is he's like working for people in Congress. But then he used to be working for Democrats, for liberals, and now he's moving into the conservative side of the aisle. So that's kind of like this change in identity for him. And all he wants to do is marry Ali Sheedy. But it turns out that he's like cheating on her left and right.
And he thinks if he marries her, he'll stop cheating on her.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the thing. He keeps pushing her towards marriage. And she's just very much like, I need to have my own identity before I marry you. I need to be someone other than
your girlfriend.
Right.
And need to be someone outside of this couple. Like, this couple can't
Which is
me.
interesting because she's one of the few people that we don't really see what her career path was.
No.
They don't really. I mean, she sits at kind of like a drafting table, so I was like, is she an architect? But
we don't. Well, then I also saw, because they had like that weird big mural on the wall. I thought she was like a graphic designer, like something
I don't know.
Like that.
But
and their apartment that looks like a dentist's office from the 80s.
Yeah.
With some random plants that leave leaves everywhere.
So you have those two, and then you have Andrew McCarthy, who is Kevin.
And is in love with Ali Sheedy.
Yes, loves her.
And he's a writer, and certainly more like that literary, loves Woody Allen, Pessimistic, sure. Yeah. Like very,
down.
What's the word I'm trying to think of? Like academic kind of.
Yeah, and he's like, love is crazy, love is bullshit, marriage is a, part of the system, like all that kind of stuff.
And then we have this other side plot of Emilio Estevez, who doesn't seem like he links in really with anyone, because his part in this movie was not really about
his
like everyone else. Yeah, like everyone else's they were very involved with each other, interconnected in each other's stories.
Right.
Emilio Estevez's story was like out on way the other side, because he was obsessed with, and like seriously obsessed with, Andie MacDowell, who is the same person in every movie. Like, she talks the same way, and she's the same person in every movie. But it's a great person. She's lovely, and she has lovely hair.
Well, and then and Emilio Estevez's character, which I thought they were calling him Kirby the whole time, but we saw in the credits, it's actually Kerbo.
It's very different. Kirby and Kerbo.
Kirbo. Kerbo.
Kerbo.
So that was something.
And and that, we'll talk about that
separately.
Because that was a very surprising thing to me. A lot of this was surprising to me as someone who grew up knowing about this movie, knowing about the Brat Pack being like a thing, but never having really seen this movie. It was interesting to me because there's a complete lack of sense of humor to this movie, which I feel like in today's world you don't get that. Like, if there's a it's always like a rom-com.
Right.
And this had like some it was supposed to be like about relationships and romance, but it was very drama.
It was a drama.
So much drama. It was the whitest white movie that ever did white.
Surely was.
I will say that. There was one speaking black character in this movie, and she was a prostitute.
Oh, right.
And very briefly in this movie.
Yeah.
There was a gay character, very briefly, but we loved him.
Yeah, he was great. They really tried to overemphasize the fact that he was gay with very
props.
Yeah.
He had like a fancy cocktail.
Right. Like, he opened the door to his apartment and he's like holding like a margarita glass with like a umbrella and a fruit on it.
Right. It was very like an 80s like yeah, this is,
Like
and
a
also
stereotypical. Right.
I mean, they weren't mean about him necessarily, but they were definitely like, you know, shame to be gay kind of a thing.
Well, I don't know though, because they do talk. There's a part where Jules is talking to Kevin, Demi Moore is talking to Andrew McCarthy, and they all think he's gay because he's quietly in love with this other woman, so he's not dating anyone else.
Right.
And she remembers, she's like, well, there's no shame in it. It's okay. She was,
yeah,
she was like, it became very chic to be gay in the 70s or something like that. Like, she makes that statement, which, you know, it's a little positive.
It was positive, yes, with that. But it's definitely just like, this is a white people nonsense.
White straight people
This
movie.
is a white straight nonsense movie. Very
Nonsense?
intense. It was a little bit, like, I gotta say, I agree with the reviews at the time. It's a little bit overindulgent. You know, like, everybody's very serious about some things that I'm just like, yeah, I don't know.
But I also think too, I'm gonna defend this.
Okay.
movie. I'll throw and throw.
Okay,
I'm gonna
let's do
say, when you were 23 or 24, just graduated from college,
I guess.
and you were just starting your career, everything was very serious and
Oh yeah,
important too.
I wrote down here, your 20s are the worst.
They are.
Because they really are. You're like, it's like almost like middle school again.
Yeah.
In a different way, where you're trying to figure out, you need to go that next step to being like a full-blown adult, which I would call like having a constant relationship, having like a family if that's what you want,
paying your bills,
getting an
apartment,
yeah, all of
job.
those things. You're like right there, but you're also not right there. You're still don't know necessarily what the heck you're doing.
Right.
So yeah, 20s are definitely the worst, and I got that from this as well.
They're very self-absorbed, obviously, because they're very much trying to figure out their place after college and how their dynamic is going to change and how their worldview is going to be so different.
Yeah, I thought it was, you know, I don't know, but then at the same time, the relationship that they're having with each other, and even with like Emilio Estevez, it's
okay. Talk about Emilio Estevez, because he really bothers you in this movie, and I agree on that.
That storyline was the most surprising of them all, because it is straight up stalker. He is a stalker.
Curbo
is a stalker. He went on a date with Andie MacDowell in college.
Yes.
One date with this woman.
Mm-hmm.
He sees her, just happens to see her again, and he becomes obsessed, where he is like, everything he is doing in his life is about getting this girl, because he feels like it is his destiny to be with this girl, this woman, who's a doctor. She's a doctor.
And he's just decided this, and he's currently working as a waiter, which fine, great.
Right.
He graduated from college with the rest of them.
He talks about like going to law school.
But then he talks about going to medical school. So it's clear he's undecided in his future.
Right.
The one thing he has decided on is that
she's the one.
Gail Biederman.
Gail Biederman is Dale? I don't know. She's the one. But she does not really know him.
No.
And she's not really interested in him. Like, there's nothing about her
She's
that
not
gives
at all.
any
she
interest.
barely knows he exists.
She ends up going on, like, agreeing to meet him for dinner.
Yes.
And he's like way intense about it and weird. Gets to the restaurant before it even opens to pick their table. Like, really weird stuff. And then she's just like, she has to leave because she's a doctor, so she has to go. He ends up like stalking her and following her to a party later on and crashing the party.
Yeah, and he comes into the party and like looking at her through the window.
And he's like kind of like intense with her, like she owes him anything.
Right.
And she takes him back to her apartment.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, like, the decisions that she's making in this were very interesting to me, because it's almost normalizing the way he's acting. Yeah. And he's acting in a very, scary.
Intense,
scary way. Mm-hmm. So, and then he throws this big part, like, he gets this idea in his head that he has to have a good job or something to impress her.
Oh, right.
And so he starts working for Mr. Kim.
Yes. My dad.
Your dad. And, you know, he's taking care of his house for the weekend, and he throws this big party there thinking that she's going to come to this party and be very impressed. But she doesn't, because she never even accepted the invitation. He was just like, I'm having this party. And she's like, okay, great.
Yeah, and then she doesn't come, and he gets very angry, and he drives to her apartment
Well, first he's calling. He's calling her place of business. He's calling the hospital. They're like, she's not there. Then he's like stalking the house. They're not answering. He goes to the apartment. Her roommate is just like, I don't have to tell you where she is.
Right.
Like, you're nuts. Because the roommate saw him smelling her pillow, which I didn't even mention before.
Yes.
And then she's like, well, she went skiing. Somehow he knows there's only one place where you could be
skiing,
if you're going skiing.
Sure.
So he goes to the ski lodge in this little car that he borrowed from one of these other pretty people.
Sure.
And he's like knocking on the door. She's fully there with a very handsome, seeming like put together man.
Right.
And he like,
he like screams and yells and bangs on the door and was like, get out here. Like
she owed him anything. Yeah. Like, she could have legit called the police. Like, this movie should have been a lot different than what it was. Like, this movie should have ended with him in jail. Yeah, with the way that he acted. But then in the end,
his car breaks down. His car won't move because it's in the snow.
Critical point.
Yeah, his car breaks down because he drove this tiny car to this snow mountain. And so the boyfriend, Andie MacDowell's new boyfriend, invites him inside to stay the night so he doesn't freeze to death in the car. And he's still all mean and bitter towards her. He's like, you're going to give me his pajamas.
I know, and this man is being very nice.
Yeah, trying to be super nice.
Right.
Like, welcomes him into the home and, lets him stay the night.
And it's basically just like, you're going to freeze to death.
Yeah, let's fix this in the morning.
You can stay here. Like, we don't want you to die.
Sure.
So come stay here. When he's going to leave, this is the funniest thing. So, okay. Emilio Estevez is going to leave.
Yeah. After the guy basically digs his car out and gets it ready to go for him.
Right. Kept this man warm. Ostensibly gave him food.
Yeah.
Like, they're letting him go. And the man, the boyfriend who's with Andie MacDowell, comes out with a Polaroid camera. And it's like, okay, guys, let me take your picture. Right. Why?
I don't know.
No idea. Like, you just came here stalking. It was like a fun family vacation. Let me take your picture.
Right.
Takes their picture. And, like, either right before then or right after, Emilio grabs Andie MacDowell and, like, dips her down and does, like, a movie kiss with her. And she's all just like, oh, maybe I was wrong about you. And he's just like, yes. And he walks away from the situation just like, I've won.
Yeah, and he's driving away and he's like pumping his fist out the window like, yeah, I'm the man.
I know I'm going to, like, I don't know if you're supposed to be left with like, oh, she's going to like, she does love him and she is going to end up.
Yeah.
But that was terrible. Like, what a bad message for you to receive as a child.
Yeah.
The other thing that I really wanted to, because I was thinking a lot about just little Kim watching this movie and the messages you were receiving.
Okay, what else?
Not just that crimped hair was awesome, which I could say Demi Moore pulls it off for sure.
Demi Moore pulls a lot of things off.
She pulls a lot of things off. She's gorgeous.
Amazing.
Like, gorgeous. With Bad Boys. Okay. What you gonna do? So we all love a bad boy. I think it's interesting that it is set up in this movie that liking the bad boy is akin to empowerment. Like, because like Rob Lowe is the baddest of the bad boys in this movie. He's also the hottest of the hot boys in this movie.
Indeed, yes.
And Mare, she like loves him,
right,
and just like tells her parents who want her to marry the good guy and everything else. It's like, no, I'm choosing the bad boy,
right,
because that's my agency and that's how I'm going to show it. Right. In this movie. So it's like this, almost like a virtue of picking a guy who's terrible. Like, it's not just that he's a bad boy because he does drugs or he drinks or whatever. He has a child and a wife who he cheats on all the time. Like, she knows it. Everybody knows it.
Well, it seems like the relationship's a little messed up because when Billy Hicks and his band are playing at the club, she comes in with another guy and like proceeds to make out at a table right in front of him because she wants to make him jealous.
Yes.
And then the guy fights with Billy and punches him in the nose and he's all bleeding, but then they're like, oh, I love you.
Yeah. And maybe she did that to get his attention.
Yeah,
and that was the whole thing.
Of course.
I mean, a whole lot could be said about that, but he's like the way he is with Demi Moore, where Demi Moore's trying to have a heart-to-heart with him, and he tries to get her to,
get his keys out of his pants.
Yes. I'm not gonna. I don't feel comfortable saying it on this podcast because it was so uncomfortable.
Well,
but yeah,
he tries to take
it was
advantage
a little
of the
date
situation.
rapey.
Yeah, it was. Definitely
it was a little date rapey.
Definitely was. But while they're parked outside of his house, and
where his wife and baby are,
right? And Demi Moore's character is like having a heartfelt conversation with him, like, "Hey, I'm having these problems. Like, I really need to talk to you."
Right? Like, I'm
and
a drug addict.
Like, yeah. And he's fully just like, "Oh, well, I think we should bang." And that's that.
They're all terrible. But again, like going back to this idea of the bad guy and, oh, it's okay to go back. There's a lot of like forgiveness for things that maybe, like, I'm all for forgiving your friends and for, not, having some grace with people and everything else. However, some of the things like they do are pretty terrible in this.
Right. Well, and then also, I mean, you have the Alec character who is living with, asking every day Leslie to marry him. Like, he's just fully like, we're going to get married. Let's get married. I want to get married.
Yes.
I love you. All this stuff. But then he confesses to Kevin that he had sex with the lingerie salesperson in the dressing room.
Yeah.
And then we come to find out that this is just something common that he does all the time. Like, he has affairs with all of these ladies all the time.
Yeah.
And so Kevin finds out, and Kevin obviously is in love with Leslie, so he doesn't, he's not super happy about that. But then at the end, they kind of just like gloss over, and it's just like, oh,
and they're all friends together.
Yeah, and
she's like, I need some time alone, and they're like, okay, we can all be friends,
right? Because Kevin and Leslie end up having sex.
They do.
And she keeps her pearls on the whole time, like a classy lady should.
What was up with her style with the pearls and the lace collar? Like there's no more lace in the world because she used all the lace in this movie for all of her collars.
And she used it for good, I think. I loved it.
I could tell you very much loved this whole
I didn't
style.
like her haircut, but I did love her bows at her neck. I've always tried to do that, and I look like,
You always look cute.
I don't know.
You do. You pull it off. You pull it off.
But, yeah, so I think she does the bows and she does the pearls and the oversized jackets, and she's just, she's a style icon.
She is a style icon. I guess I don't know. They were all, I guess it was hard for me watching it without any of the attachments from my youth to it. And just watching it now, it's very difficult to like them as people and to be like...
Could you pick a favorite character?
My favorite character out of all of them? Oh, man. Ron. I think I probably liked, and this is terrible, but Rob Lowe, not just because he was extremely pretty to look at on the screen, but also I think because I connect more with that character, not myself, but in people I've seen in my life.
Well, that's the thing. Don't you think that he's the bad boy, but don't you think he gets that ounce of forgiveness? Because it's like, oh, he's had a hard life. He's going through something. He's, you don't really, hear
well, they
about
never say about
family.
they don't say anything about his family.
But the assumption is,
problems.
right, that he's, he wasn't raised like the rest of them.
Right. And he's like working at a gas station by the end of it because he needs money.
He keeps getting fired from jobs.
Yeah.
He wears tank tops.
Like, he's not transitioning into adulthood he's the worst at all.
Yeah, and he kind of goes back to the frat house because he wants to relive his heyday.
Right.
And then he's there and they're just like, you can get us the good drugs. And he realizes like that they don't love him.
Yeah.
They love, this party person that he is or has become.
Right. Yeah, and so I feel like I liked him the most because I feel like it was a lot more. I could understand his character more and like the decisions he was making in it and why. Okay. The other people, it's like I don't understand the way the relationships were working in that movie.
Okay,
were very weird to me.
I can see that.
And I think it was very like. Everybody taking themselves, enjoying the smell of their own farts a little too much in this movie. For sure. I mean, there were so many, weird... I just want to talk about some of the other things that stuck out to me in this movie. Okay, we already talked about Rob Lowe and his saxophone. some other things. Oh, the 80s diet culture makes a nice little thing
appearance.
there. Appearance, which was a huge thing in the 80s. Like, I don't think... And diet culture's always been there. I think they talk about it now a little bit differently.
Yes.
But back in the 80s, it was just like every mom in the world's like, my thighs are too big. And
yeah, well, they mentioned that. And then I also think too, and Demi Moore, she's not interested in eating, but that's because she's addicted to cocaine.
She does do a lot of cocaine.
So I think that's part of the reason she doesn't really need food.
I thought it was interesting. Demi Moore gets advances on her salary.
Yeah.
Which I was like, is that a thing that people used to be able to do? Just be like, oh, give me the next 2 months worth of salary, please.
Yeah, what did they say? That she was like 2 weeks?
She was 2 months.
2 months?
2 months
ahead?
behind.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. And she owed them all this money because then she got fired, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if she still owed it to them or what.
Yeah.
But then I wonder, remember, like, they were like, she broke up with the guy, but then it was like, who was picking her up? She was with all kinds of weird people. At one point, she was hanging out with people from the Middle East. And that was like a weird thing.
Yeah, it was.
She got herself into like really weird situations.
But they all they're very all codependent because they would bail each other out of these situations. Like in the middle of the night when she was found herself in this bad situation, she called Alec.
Right.
And he got out of bed and went and like saved her from this. And I feel like that was...
And there was even a thing there where it was like they maybe had made out in the past or like because she was like, oh, come over to my house.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Like, I don't understand how the relationships are. Yeah. Is it just like, are they I want to say they're not a throuple because there's a lot of them, but they're very much like...
Well, I think that also, I'm not defending, but at the same time, I think...
You are.
No, I'm not. But I think that there's these close groups of friends, and then it becomes this, like, very like brother and sister, but also like incestuous, like people hooking up with each other kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you have like these very crossed boundaries because you don't have any boundaries in your friendships. And I think that is something that I do think that's real.
No, I think that's real too, for sure. Definitely experienced some of that in my life. College. But the other thing, some of the other things I talked about, the crimped hair.
Yeah.
The lace. It was a funny thing too. The lace teddy. There was talk of lace teddy.
Red lace teddy.
Red lace teddy. So it was very 80s. It was just like the things you think of with the 80s.
Right.
Were this
well,
thing.
And just that whole, I think that's funny too, that lingerie thing, because I feel like that was a very 80s thing, and it was very much assumed that when you grow up, that's what you wore to bed, right?
And your comfortable lace teddy.
Right. Just every night you just changed into that.
I know. Well, because that's the thing. She's wearing Judd Nelson's pajamas, which
comfy.
That's completely what I mean. I'm sad that I thought boys wore pajamas, but I guess they don't in real life. At least my husband doesn't have like a pajama.
No, not like a set.
Not a set. Not like a word cleaver pajama set, which it seemed like Judd Nelson did. Stuff in his jammies.
Yeah.
But overall, I would say I'm glad I watched it. It's a movie that, again, it's a cultural watermark. Like, it's something that, people definitely think of. But I do think, going back to the whole topic of this podcast, I couldn't help but to think of, this was a hugely popular thing, but it didn't involve any other cultures.
Right.
It was just, and that is something that I do think is good. That over time, there's definitely been a big push to involve more people and more points of view.
Pay attention to that.
Pay attention to it. Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely strange watching it now, how it just wasn't that at all.
No, not at all.
Not at all. And it was what it was. And it was a little bit of 80s, like a whole lot of 80s.
Oh, it's a whole lot of 80s. And I just think I really think, though, it sets up a lot of stuff that came after it, too. Because this dynamic of these, like, this friendship bond kind of thing that lasts into your 20s and 30s, that's not real. That's a myth as well. But I think but there's a lot of pop culture that's set around that.
Oh, like Friends.
Yeah, and just, just all of these television shows that are like, How I Met Your Mother, all these things where people hang out.
But what about, like, I'm trying to think, because you said what before then, and I'm trying to think, like, ensemble movies like that, where you had, like, a big group of young friends. I mean, you know, I'm not super, there's so many movies out there. I'm trying to think if there was anything similar to it.
But I think that was,
maybe that's what made it special.
And I think the thing that made the Brat Pack something and noticeable is because they were all young in real life. Mm-hmm. It's not like, you know, those movies where you have like a 35-year-old playing a high school kid. Sure. These are actually young people of that age.
Why you gotta knock grease like that?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So you have these truly young people who are young actors and actresses who are dealing with their own stuff, and then all of a sudden they're kind of coming in and wiping everybody else out and kind of taking over.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, think of all the movies that all of the people in that movie, I mean, they're still relevant today.
Yeah.
I mean, you still hear about them.
I mean, Rob Lowe, still working. Demi Moore, still relevant.
Out of all of them, I mean, I think Rob Lowe is probably the one who is still at the top. And he's done the best, and he's still, you know, he's still pulling audiences in a big way.
Where's Ali Sheedy? What's she doing?
Ali?
Where are you at, girl?
What's happening with you? Mare, where are you?
Yeah, I was trying to think of Mare Winningham. She wasn't, like, really in a lot of stuff, but she was in Some Kind of Wonderful, right? With Eric Stoltz.
Was that her in that movie? I don't think that was her. No, I think it was somebody else.
Are you sure?
Yes, I think it was, it was somebody else who was pretty great. That's not the same person. They have a similar look to them.
What else was Mare Winningham?
Because the girl from Some Kind of Wonderful was in Benny and June. She was June.
Oh.
Benny was Johnny Depp. Oh. And I think that's like the 90s Brat Packy.
Oh, Johnny Depp. Part of?
Yeah. But yeah, I'm trying to think out of that whole group. I mean, Demi Moore did very well. Like, into the 90s, she was huge. Such a huge star.
Yeah, and then she became kind of like, remember she did like G.I. Jane.
Oh, she was like a top box office, you know, hit maker. Rob Lowe wasn't that, because he went through some like real life problems too, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that was before or after this.
Yeah, he went through some real life problems.
Is he the Sex, Lies, and Videotape guy?
I think that's James Spader.
Is it?
I think so. Is Rob Lowe in that too? I think Andy McDowell is Sex, Lies, and Videotape. But
no,
Sex,
but
Lies, and Videotape.
Oh, no, wait.
He did. No, that was his scandal in real life.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
Oh, Rob Lowe.
You dirty.
You dirty dog with your saxophone. But yeah, then, I feel like Demi Moore couldn't pull like a TV show and pull a big audience now as compared to Rob Lowe. Like, Rob Lowe is everywhere, and people love him.
But I think he's committed to just continuing to work. Like, he's on a show that's like Rescue 911 or Fire 911.
And he's got a show with his son, and he's got like a podcast.
And he did Parks and Rec, and I feel like he just like consistently, because he was in this movie, you would say he was a dramatic actor. He was a serious actor.
He's a serious. Well, and he was also, we talked about The Outsiders. Mm-hmm. That was a very serious movie, too.
But then he did stuff, which I did hear him recently talk about, like Austin Powers and Tommy Boy.
Oh, my God. Yes.
So he's just continued. He was in Wayne's World, too, remember?
He was. We just watched Wayne's World recently. Such a good movie.
Excellent.
Party on. Right. Not this podcast.
Right.
Ooh. Yeah, and who else? Judd Nelson had his moment, and he was also on that, was it Suddenly Susan?
Judd Nelson?
With Brooke Shields from like the 90s. That was his, he was. I paid attention to Judd Nelson.
Of course
he's got that nose that I love. Right. Then we have, who else? Andrew McCarthy, he kind of faded away, but he's back a little bit. I mean,
Emilio Estevez went through a phase for sure. Like
Mighty Ducks.
And Men at Work with his brother Charlie Sheen.
Correct, but I think he does a lot of like producing now. And wasn't he married to
Paula Abdul?
That
came out of nowhere. That was a deep cut.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was out there, but I think he's the original Nepo baby, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, but it's interesting to see. This movie was definitely a good one to pick. I know we usually do the James Spader connection, but I feel like it's so easy.
Yeah.
He connects to every. I was even thinking to myself watching this, I'm sure James Spader auditioned for one of these roles.
Oh, definitely.
Like he was on the list somewhere.
Yeah, he was like the Judd Nelson role, probably.
And he probably was somewhere in an apartment somewhere. I don't need to be in a Brat Pack. I'm James Spader.
So he wasn't in the Brat Pack. We don't think.
I don't think he was Brat Pack, but Molly Ringwald, wasn't she Brat Pack? And she wasn't in this movie.
Yes. She was Brat Pack. And Anthony Michael Hall.
Anthony Michael Hall, yeah. Was Charlie Sheen Brat Pack?
No.
Or no? He's like, Emilio,
No.
You're stupid with your Brat Pack.
Was it? Oh, I guess Emilio was. Because
Emilio
was
was.
Breakfast Club.
He was. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to explore the Brat Pack a little bit more.
Define the boundaries of the Brat Pack.
Define the boundaries.
Sure.
But, and we'll have to hashtag Brat Pack this episode for sure.
Definitely.
So I don't even think we can do a James Spader connection on this because it's Andrew McCarthy. We got Mannequin.
Just watched the movie. We told you about the movie that he's connected in. Mannequin.
But also Pretty in Pink.
Yes.
He's connected in that one. Those are both Andrew McCarthy.
Well, vehicles.
Yes. Did he make a movie with anyone else?
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did too.
Yeah.
He's better than them all. I don't know.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
All right. Well, do you have anything else to say?
I don't. I still love this movie. I think it's great. I think it's worth a watch, guys. 5 stars.
I just want you to go into it knowing that it's not the movie. I thought it was going to be a lot more fun and lighthearted than it actually was.
No, it's very serious.
It's
very
super serious. Mm-hmm.
It's
super duper serious. Yes, it's if you want to see Rob Lowe rock on the saxophone, truly sweaty saxophone, watch this movie.
Yeah, I would like to know if anybody out there plays the saxophone. You know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to you, Eddie. Let us know if he's really playing the saxophone. We need to know.
So Eddie is my younger brother, who he is a professional musician and saxophone player, and he also so kindly mixes our episodes and puts them together with he's advising us on some of our things that we're doing, and we love him very much. And maybe this movie, I don't know, maybe he watched this movie and it inspired him to play saxophone. He thought he's like, that's a cool way to be a cool guy.
Yeah.
I want to be Rob Lowe.
Did he cut the sleeves off a lot of his shirts when you were younger?
No, not at all.
Now's the time, Eddie.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. And remember to be confident.
And not controversial. Come on, guys. Stop it.
Come on. Stop it. All right. Goodbye. Bye.
Confidently controversial.